Okay, let's begin with everybody loses here. There are no winners in what happened yesterday, the assault on the nation's capital. Nobody wins. Okay? There are 4 dead people. There is a damaged president. All right, Donald Trump's historical legacy was damaged, and I'll tell you exactly how. Is that fair? Maybe not. But life is not fair, as you know. So I'm going to begin with the professional agitators, which is a very interesting subject that the media won't cover, the corporate media. There were professional agitators involved in the pro-Trump demonstrations yesterday. Those are people who travel from place to place trying to cause trouble, in some cases violent trouble. Antifa, part of that. Proud Boys, part of that. Not all of them, but a number of them. So there were professional agitators in the crowd that assaulted the Capitol. Who were they? We don't know. But Sarah Palin went on nationwide TV and said this.
Keep in mind, we don't know who all were the instigators in this, of these horrible things that happened today. I think a lot of it is the Antifa folks. I've been sent pictures of the same characters whom were captured on images today storming the Capitol, as had been in protests on the other side of politics earlier in the summer.
All right, so Mrs. Palin apparently believes, that Antifa was involved. Well, we checked it out. And there is no solid information about Antifa at this point. None. The pictures she referred to have been examined by a number of agencies, and there is no conclusive proof that these people are Antifa or anybody else. So what Mrs. Palin was doing is what almost everybody does. She was taking speculation and putting it out there as truth. So how do we find out who these professional agitators were? And let me tell you how I know there were pros there. It's a certain type of person who knows how to break into a building. There were people who brought bars, okay, hand bars, where you could smash things, to the Capitol. You don't do that if you're a peaceful demonstrator. You don't do that if you're an ordinary protester. You bring in a bar, you're bringing it to use it. Okay? It's like an accelerant. When you saw the George Floyd protests, people brought accelerants to start fires. And they brought bars to smash windows. They brought the bars to the Capitol. Okay, now, police say about 70 people have been arrested. This is Washington, D.C. police, Metro Police, not the feds. All right, 70 arrests so far. Only one is for riot. 1 out of 70. Are you kidding me? How many people do we see inside that rotunda? Had to be 100. 1? The others are curfew violators, people carrying weapons into the District of Columbia, simple assault, 1, defacing public property, 1. Well, you have 1 arrest right now on the record for a riot. It's just inconceivable to me. So what are you going to get out of 1 person? Are you going to know who these professional agitators are? No, you're not. And sadly, this is the state of law enforcement in our nation's capital. So I don't expect to get any profile. I hope we do, but I expect it. Now, the feds have released data about arrests made after the George Floyd killing. About 6 months of arrests. You ready for this? There are 340 active federal cases in a 6-month period in all of those cities. 340. There have been 3 out of the 340 that have pled guilty. Just 3. All right? The number of people still in detention, federal detention, is 62. The others are bailed out or were released. The total number of arrests made, federal, state, local, almost 14,000. Out of the 14,000, only 340 are being prosecuted by the feds. Now, you can't tell me out of that 14,000 that are only 340 people cross state lines to do this stuff after the George Floyd incident, because that's not true. There is no will by law enforcement to prosecute these people after George Floyd and yesterday. There's no will. You will never stop this kind of anarchy unless you prosecute. Okay? Of those still active in the federal cases, 40% are white, 33% black, 6% Hispanic, and the rest, people don't know what they are, I guess. That's the Associated Press reporting. Now, everybody who participates in civil unrest, in violent protest, should go to prison. So where you stop it. Maybe just for a day or two if it's a minor infraction. Everybody. I'm a judge. I'm giving them prison time. Okay, let's get to the political aspect of this. There is a major villain emerging, and that man's name is Senator Chuck Schumer from New York. He now is calling for the removal of President Trump using the 25th Amendment. 25th Amendment is president's unfit for office. I write about it extensively in Killing Reagan. Okay? Never used, but I really spell it out. So Schumer, who's going to be the majority leader in the Senate, says, I got to move Trump out now. So I say to myself, is that going to help the country? You'll just inflame Trump supporters even more, Senator Schumer, will you not? There's less than 2 weeks left of Donald Trump's term. Why would you do that? Why would you put the nation through another hateful exercise? Why? Because Schumer doesn't care about you or me or the country. He is and always has been a rank ideologue who worships at the altar of power. He has been senator here in New York for decades. He has done nothing to help this state, which is in a disastrous position right now. So Schumer publicly is calling for Donald Trump to be removed using the Constitution. That's not going to happen. Okay? Now, President-elect Biden should stop this immediately and show some leadership. He should come out today and say, we're not going to do that because that divides the country even further and creates hatred. So Donald Trump will serve out the next 13 days, and then I'll take over. I would respect Joe Biden if he did that. Will he do it? No. Unless he sees me right now, and he may get a transcript and changes his mind and wises up a little bit. But if he did that, if he shut Schumer up, as he should, if he really wants Biden to represent all of the people, points his finger at Schumer and says, button it now. All right. Now, yesterday, Schumer took to the floor to grandstand about the riots. Go.
I want to be very clear. Those who perform these reprehensible acts cannot be called protesters. No, these were rioters and insurrectionists, goons and thugs, domestic terrorists. They do not represent America.
On June 1st, Schumer also took to the floor to talk about the George Floyd protesters.
The small minority who exploit the moment for violence and mayhem are wrong and do not advance the cause of justice. But I would note that while over 4,000 protesters have been arrested in the last week, only 1 in 4 of the police officers involved in the killing of George Floyd has been arrested. While that statistic does not excuse the violence we have seen, it certainly helps to explain the frustration and anger right now.
Oh, that's good. We explain the frustration and anger of people burning buildings, assaulting police, and destroying entire neighborhoods. We can explain and understand their anger, according to Chuck Schumer. But you can't explain and understand the anger of the people yesterday in Washington who rioted. Now, I don't explain anything. You riot, you destroy, you're a traitor, in my opinion. There's no but, there's no however in my analysis. But Schumer, well, we can explain the frustration and anger of his left-wing cadre, but never the conservative people who feel that the election was fraudulent. Biden and Harris. So we did some research on what their posture was in the wake of the George Floyd riots. First, Mr. Biden.
And he is horrifyingly and not surprisingly intentionally stoking the flames of division and racism in this country. I said from the outset of the recent protests that there's no place for violence or destruction of property. Peaceful protesters should be protected, and arsonists and anarchists should be prosecuted. And local law enforcement can do that.
No, they can't. So Mr. Biden blamed Donald Trump for all the riots after the George Floyd killing. But local law enforcement can handle it. Obviously, local law enforcement could not. All right? So Biden, it's the same old thing. Joe doesn't know what's happening. Simple as that. How about Kamala Harris on the Floyd stuff? Roll it.
People are rightfully angry and exhausted. And after the murders of Breonna and George and Ahmaud and so many others, it's no wonder people are taken to the streets. And I support them. We must always defend peaceful protest and peaceful protesters. We should not confuse them with those looting and committing acts of violence.
All right, so she convicts the police officers involved in the shootings after the murders. She used the words murders. Okay, not the deaths, murders. And this is what she did, you'll remember, to Kavanaugh. Convicted Kavanaugh of heinous crimes based on nothing. All right, this is why this woman is so dangerous. And then she goes, it's no wonder people are taking to the streets. It's no wonder, and I support that. Well, is it any wonder that millions of Americans feel that the election was fraudulent when the Attorney General, William Barr, said there was fraud in the election? Do you understand that, Ms. Harris? Do you understand? It's way beyond hypocrisy now. We're into a zone where much of our leadership in this country is corrupt. They're corrupt people. Pelosi's corrupt. Schumer's corrupt. Harris is corrupt. I'm not going to say Biden. Not yet. I don't think that's right. I'll just say, in my opinion, Biden is clueless. The media. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because if you don't know by now that the corporate media is off the charts corrupt, if you're still watching cable television for information, I understand you might want to see the pictures, the video, but if you're really sitting there and watching any corporate media for information, I can't help you. I can't. So here's just a short sample of the national press saying that Donald Trump is directly responsible for the riots yesterday. Go.
I'll be honest, I'm still sort of having chills by the fact that the sitting president of the United States actually encouraged this behavior and encouraged what is happening right now.
President Trump, if he wanted to, and there is really no reason to think he wants to, he could stop this. He could stop it with one tweet, and he will not because, frankly, he likes this.
These insurrectionists took their marching orders from and wore the colors of a very small man, once considered the leader of the free world. A man who has shown himself to be a coward, who has whipped them into a frenzy with lies about the election ever since he lost more than a month ago.
Okay, so Anderson Cooper has no interest in investigating what happened in the election, but anybody who does is lying, according to Mr. Cooper. According to Jake Tapper, President Trump enjoyed watching the Capitol building assaulted. How would Tapper know that? How? I mean, that's defamation per se, with malice. Now, Donald Trump can't sue because he's a public person, and our laws are insane in this area. So we have, of course, a media that has hated Donald Trump from the beginning, and that hatred is a contagion, like COVID. So the hatred that the media has brought in its coverage of President Trump is now infected many of the supporters of Mr. Trump. They've caught the virus. And this is really wreaking havoc in this country. Not to be outdone, NBC News, which has now decided to play the race card all the time, not once in a while, all the time. Roll the tape.
White Americans aren't afraid of the cops. White Americans are never afraid of the cops, even when they're committing insurrection, even when they're engaged in attempting to occupy our Capitol to steal the votes of people who look like me. Because in their minds, they own this country, they own that Capitol, they own the cops.
I'm not even going to comment. But NBC News has put that person in a primetime position. Social media. So Donald Trump gave Facebook, Twitter, YouTube an excuse to ban him. Now, the excuse is flimsy, that Donald Trump incited the violence in Washington. Nevertheless, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube have banned him. So, what does the president do? There are alternatives. Parler, I think, is one. But this is a pretty serious situation. So you have the three most powerful social media operations saying, that guy, even though he's president, we're not going to allow him to get his opinion or say anything any longer. Think about it. Think about it. Now, did Donald Trump incite the violence? No. But he made a huge mistake, a mistake that's going to hurt his legacy. So 100,000 people are in D.C. supporting Donald Trump's contention that the election was fraudulent. He knows that. He knows there's anger in the air. He gives a speech to his supporters. That's perfectly reasonable to do. They are supporting him in his view of the vote. I would have done it. But in a speech to 100,000 angry people, you got to tamp down the anger and roll up the facts, just as I do on this broadcast. So you have to say a number of times, please do not be like the George Floyd protesters who did damage to people and property. Please do not do that. President Trump should have said that. Tamp down the emotion and presented his case with facts. He did not. Huge mistake for his legacy. In fact, the irony of this is that the people who love Trump the most have hurt him the most by sieging that Capitol yesterday. Okay, the Republican Party. There are Trump haters within it. Many of them were personally attacked by the president. You know about John McCain. And I want you to Google O'Reilly, Donald Trump, McCain. And you will see how I confronted Donald Trump, then a candidate, about his assessment of Senator McCain, the late Senator McCain. That is well worth watching. Okay, so Liz Cheney, the Congresswoman from Wyoming, despises Donald Trump because Mr. Trump attacked her father for creating unnecessary war and killing Americans. Here's what Ms. Cheney said yesterday.
We just had a violent mob assault the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to prevent us from carrying out our constitutional duty. And there's no question that the president formed the mob, the president incited the mob, the president addressed the mob, he lit the flame.
With respect, I disagree with Ms. Cheney. Simple, all I can say. Mitt Romney, senator from Utah, again, same thing. All right? Donald Trump called him a loser, called him all kinds of names. Romney hates Trump. Here's what Romney said yesterday.
What happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Those who choose to continue to support his dangerous gambit by objecting to the results of a legitimate democratic election will forever be seen as being complicit.
Well, how does Senator Romney know it was a legitimate democratic election? How? There has been no federal investigation of it. There has been no special counsel appointed to look into the vote on November 3rd, which there obviously should be. Now, Jonathan Turley, not a conservative, a constitutional law professor at George Washington University, a very far left school. Turley has a column posted on realclearpolitics.com explaining why there must be an investigation of the election, which I have called for since November 4th, the day after. So we got to do forensics. You got to do all kinds of very, very expensive and difficult micro look. Philadelphia, Wayne County, Fulton County, Clark County, Nevada, just to put this to rest. Maybe Romney's right. Maybe it was a legitimate democratic election, but he doesn't know, nor does he care to find out. Now, will Joe Biden push an election investigation? No. Will the Senate? No. Senate lost to the Democrats in Georgia. No. Is the Justice Department going to do it under the new Attorney General, Merrick Garland? No. No one will do it. And that is another casualty of this unbelievable political frenzy. We're never going to know. Okay. Again, the most important point I think I've made is that, in my opinion, a humble opinion, based on facts, I don't think Donald Trump wanted violence to happen. I don't think he incited the crowd. I don't think this was on his plate at all, because this has damaged him. And I know the guy better than anybody. If you read The United States of Trump, and I hope you have, if you haven't, please get it, The United States of Trump, you will understand the man at least partially. He's not a guy that wants violence. Okay, so we got 13 days left of the Trump administration. And as I said yesterday, historians are now going to write his legacy. What are historians going to use? Well, the ones that come out with the books late this year, next year, Bob Woodward, another book, it'll be a hatchet, okay? They're going to basically take this Capitol siege and make this the whole Trump experience. So all of the good things that he did with the economy, overseas, things like that, vanish into thin air. They'll use this horrendous display, which will live forever on the internet, to define Donald Trump. Now, that's not fair, but that will happen. And life is not fair. And you all know that in your own personal lives by watching what's happened in the public arena. Life is not fair. Never has been. Our country is not fair. That election was not fair. I don't know if it rose to the level of action, but I do know there was some cheating going on, according to the Attorney General, Bill Barr. And why would he lie? He didn't want it. He didn't want it at all. He quit, so he didn't have to deal with it. Foreign reaction. Now, this hurts me. I know a lot of people overseas. I've been to 82 countries. I lived in England for a year. So we are the most powerful and successful country in the world, and it's not even close. There's not a close second. Therefore, people are jealous of us. And if you go to foreign countries the way I have, many of them welcome Americans, like Americans. Americans spend money, but a lot of them don't. Okay? And it's because they're jealous of our success. So now the whole world sees thugs breaking into the Capitol to try to do damage to our system. And it's celebrated in many precincts. So I'm going to give you 3 world leaders. Sweden Prime Minister Stefan Löfven. Deeply worrying developments in Washington. This is an assault on democracy. President Trump and several members of Congress bear substantial responsibility for developments. Well, how would you know, Mr. Prime Minister? How would you know? How about Belgian Prime Minister Sophie Wilmès, closely following what's happening in Washington? These images are shocking. Also because they hurt our democratic ideals. They show the extent of President-elect Biden's task, which will be to unite American society around a common project. We trust him to do that. All right, fine. But I haven't seen a real stand-up in leadership from Mr. Biden so far. Maybe that'll happen soon. I hope it does. Finally, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Disgraceful scenes in U.S. Congress. The USA stands for democracy around the world. It's now vital. Should be a peaceful and orderly transition of power. Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. So there are a lot of people, and I've been listening to talk radio and it's hopeless to watch TV anymore but talk radio is a little bit raw. You get callers and things like that. A lot of people are giving up. Don't do that. This is still the best country on earth. We're in a down cycle historically. There's no doubt we are. We've got a very controversial president, okay, who drove 74 million people to vote for him, but 80 million people to vote against him. He doesn't think 80 million people did, but it was an up or down vote on Trump, just like it was an up or down vote yesterday on the Republican Party in Georgia. It wasn't about Ossoff. Warnock a little, because he's black. Okay, so I tell people, look, it's 2 years that the Democrats are going to control both houses of Congress and have the presidency. Because in 2 years, there are 34 Senate seats up. 34. Most of them Republican. But I think there are 12 Democrats up, including Warnock. If things go south, which they well might economically, you're going to see backlash, a ferocious backlash against liberal Democrats, the progressive movement. 2 years. In the meantime, there's one man, and he is now the most powerful man in Washington, standing in the way of insanity and that's Democratic Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia. Bullet tape.
50-50 means there's a tie. But if one senator does not vote on a Democratic side, there is no tie and there is no bill. So I commit to you tonight, and I commit to all of your viewers and everyone else that's watching, I want to lay those fears, I want to rest those fears for you right now, because when they talk about whether it be packing the courts or ending the filibuster, I will not vote to do that.
There it is. So Manchin, I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't have any inside information, if he switches party. That would not stop Chuck Schumer from being the Senate Majority Leader or all the Democrats controlling the Senate committee, which is really, really going to be awful in my opinion, because we're not looking for the truth, are we, in this country anymore? We are not looking for the truth. But Manchin, and there may be a couple of others, they could stop the Med. And Manchin's on record as saying he's going to do that. Now, you also have a couple of wild cards in the Republican Party, Murkowski in Alaska, Romney, but Romney usually falls into line. Finally, President Trump, look, he rallies his base loves him, got a big base. But just as many people in America hate him, and you've got to accept that fact. Just as many voters hate Donald Trump and vote against him to the detriment of their own self-interest as love him. That's what we're seeing in this entire election cycle. Joining us now, John Malcolm. He is Vice President for the Institute of Constitutional Government. All right, after now, the two Democrats in Georgia are certified. How does the country change, in your opinion?
The Democrats capturing those two Georgia Senate seats gives them an effective majority, because if there's a tie vote, Vice President Kamala Harris will break any tie. You mentioned Joe Manchin in your lead-in, John Tester as well. They're going to hold a lot of power. I don't see them switching parties. The Democrats will do anything they can to keep them in the fold, but they are certainly going to exercise a tremendous amount of power in terms of how progressive how much of President Biden's progressive agenda gets passed.
Your assessment of what Mr. Biden really wants to do. I mean, we know Nancy Pelosi, we know Schumer. They're basically going to try to patronize their voters, give the voters what they want. Is Biden in the same category?
That's hard to say. Certainly in his past as a senator and when he was vice president, he was a voice for moderation. That appeared to go a little bit to the wayside when he was running, certainly for the Democratic nomination. And since then, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, particularly now that they have control in the House and effective control, although very tenuous, in the Senate, to be more aggressive in terms of pushing a progressive agenda. We will have to see. He's now getting around to naming his cabinet picks. Some are recognized as being more progressive than others. He hasn't set forward his legislative agenda yet, but we'll see how much of the Green New Deal.
But your assessment of him, look, he wanted to be president. He said what he had to say to get to be president. He doesn't even like Kamala Harris. Do you know that? He doesn't even like Kamala Harris.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Okay.
No, I have no inside knowledge on their relationship.
She made him look like a racist in a debate. You'll remember that. And he didn't want her as VP, but it was an identity politics choice. She checked two boxes, woman, and he had pledged to nominate a woman as vice president, and a person of color, which he needed to mobilize the blacks because Hillary Clinton did not. So now you have a guy, a president, as you just said, we don't even know what he will do. I suspect he's going to do what he's told to do. And the people that are closest to him are Obama people. Is Obama a progressive radical, do you think?
Certainly by my lights, he pushed an aggressive agenda. I mean, look, the president has already said that he wants to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. He wants to re-enter into the Iran deal. He is going to take the country in a very different direction. Just how far to the left he tacks, you're right, remains to be seen. There will be a lot of pressure on him to move to the left, and we'll see whether he resists it or not.
Okay, but I don't care whether he joins the Paris Accord, or I care about the Iranian nuke deal, and that's really dangerous because those mullahs know they can do a lot more than they could do under Donald Trump, who would have smashed them. Biden, he didn't even want to get bin Laden, if you remember. But it's all about the economy, is it not? Because Trump's economy was good. I mean, it's about COVID, but COVID looks to me to be containable with the vaccine. I could be wrong, but the odds are it will be contained by summer. And then if the Democrats want to hold power 2 years from now, they're going to have a vibrant economy. So it's all about that for Joe Biden, or am I wrong?
Well, look, I never want to ignore foreign affairs. It's a potentially very dangerous world, and we have a lot of conflicts around the world, particularly with the Russians and the Chinese. But the economy is certainly critical and on people's minds. And, if there's no question that if he pushes the agenda too far to the left, there can be an electoral backlash in 2022. You pointed out that there are more vulnerable Republicans up for re-election in the Senate. But if a Biden agenda goes too far to the left, the Republicans may very well end up capturing the Senate back and taking control of the House. We'll have to see what he does.
All right, Mr. Malcolm, thanks very much. Okay, so as I said, top program, I am very disappointed that the Georgia vote put two radical left-wing people into the Senate. But there's nothing I can do about it. And there's nothing I can do about the inauguration of Joe Biden. And I am a loyal American citizen. That doesn't mean I'm here forever. Doesn't mean that I'm going to allow myself to be abused by the government. It means that I am going to take it easy. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to turn away. And this is why you, your family, your friends need us in the next 2 years. We are going to tell you what is going to happen in this country before it happens. Most news agencies are reactive, and they don't even tell you the truth. They black out stuff like Kamala Harris's plagiarism. Good example today. We never do that. We tell you the truth. But now I'm going to devote all my energies to telling you what's going to happen or what's likely going to happen so you can prepare yourself. I get, I don't know, maybe 30 questions a day from concierge members on BillO'Reilly.com. Those are the people that can email me privately and ask for advice or more information or whatever they need in a private setting. Okay? I'm like their counselor, advisor. That's concierge membership. Anyway, they say, what should I do with my money? I don't want to lose my money. Now, I can't give you specific financial advice. I can't do that. But what I can tell you is what I'm doing personally, okay? And that might be of use to you. And I do that in every problem. You have a problem, you send it to me. Sometimes I can actually solve the problem for you. Sometimes. Other times I can say, well, I would do this. Or you might try that. And then if there's a news story that you want to dig further in, I'll give you what we have. Because I can't always do that on this broadcast. So this news service now becomes a personal benefit to you rather than just something you absorb. And I want to make that very, very plain that we are living in a down cycle in America. This is not a good time for this country for many, many, many reasons. People are voting on emotion, not up here. You're being misled by the media. There are radical socialists that want to blow up the entire system and hurt you in the process. This is not a good time in America. But we've been through this stuff before. It's a cycle. And if this economy goes south, the economy that President Trump built, and he did, if it goes down, the backlash against the Democratic Party and the far left is going to be ferocious. And I think that may happen But I will be telling you along the way, all right? This is what's coming up. This is what you might do to react, okay? So this is a compact. This program that you're watching is a compact now between me and you. I've never done this before. I've been doing this news analysis for 25 years. I've never done it before, but I think the country is in such bad shape now because of the corruption of the corporate media that you can't get the truth. You can't. Well, I'll give it to you. And you may not like it, as one of our correspondents said tonight. But that's not going to stop me from giving it. So spread the word. More people we have watching, more people we have joining BillO'Reilly.com, the more power we will assemble. And that power is going to be put to help you. See you tomorrow.